This is a story about love, betrayal, and the unexpected path to forgiveness. It's about a woman who thought she had found her forever, only to discover that the person she trusted most had broken her heart in the worst way. It's about the pain of seeing the truth, the anger that follows, and the long road toward healing. And in the end, it's about how sometimes forgiving isn't about excusing the past, but freeing yourself from it. My name is Laura, and for 10 years, I believed I had the perfect marriage. David and I met in college. He was charming, intelligent, and had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. We got married 3 years after graduation. We built a home together, traveled to places we'd always dreamed of, and shared quiet mornings over coffee like something out of a movie. For years, I thought we were unshakable. But the truth is, cracks had started forming long before I noticed them. It began with late nights at work. Then came the guarded phone, the vague explanations, the weekends, with friends, that didn't include me. I wanted to believe it was just stress from his job. I told myself we were just going through a phase. One evening in early spring, I was cleaning the kitchen when his phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Mia. Before I could stop myself, I opened the message. It wasn't just one message. It was dozens. Photos, late-night confessions, inside jokes that didn't belong to us. My hands went cold. The floor felt unsteady beneath me. I read enough to know this wasn't new. It had been going on for months. When David came home that night, I confronted him. At first, he denied it. Then he blamed me, said I'd been distant, that I hadn't been paying attention to him. I stood there, stunned, listening to the man I loved twist the truth to make me the villain. The argument stretched into the early hours of the morning. I slept in the guest room with the door locked. The next day, I packed a bag and went to stay with my sister. For a week, I barely left her couch. I replayed every moment in my head, trying to figure out how I had missed the signs. Friends told me to cut him off completely. Some said I should destroy him the way he had destroyed me. But all I could feel was exhaustion. David tried calling, texting, even showing up at my sister's door. I ignored him. Until one evening, he sent an email, pages long. He admitted to the affair. He said he had ended it. He begged for another chance. Part of me wanted to delete it without reading. But another part of me, the part that still remembered our wedding vows, hesitated. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I started focusing on myself. I went for long walks. I joined a painting class I had always wanted to try. I let myself cry when I needed to, but I also let myself laugh when something was funny. One afternoon, I ran into an old friend from high school. We got coffee, and for the first time in weeks, I talked about something other than betrayal. It felt like breathing again. But David didn't disappear from my thoughts. At night, I would lie awake, wondering if people could truly change. I didn't have the answer yet. 2 weeks after David's email, he asked if we could meet in person. At first, I refused. I didn't trust myself not to crumble in front of him. But something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe the need for closure, made me agree. We met at a quiet cafe across town where no one knew us. When I walked in, he was already there, looking smaller somehow, his shoulders slouched. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Finally, he spoke. He said he had no excuse for what he had done. He told me the affair had started after a fight we had last year, one that he used as justification to seek comfort elsewhere. I listened, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup like it was an anchor. Every word felt like a stone being placed in a pile I hadn't asked to carry. He said ending things with Mia hadn't been easy because she didn't want to let go. Part of me didn't care about his struggle. The other part couldn't help but see the man I had loved for so long, sitting there looking like he had lost everything. When he reached for my hand, I pulled back. I told him trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt with a single conversation. He nodded and said he understood. But he also said he was willing to do anything to earn that trust again. That night, I thought about the years we had spent together. The good ones, the bad ones, the ones in between. I thought about the way he used to look at me, and the way he had looked at Mia in those messages. It wasn't the same. The next week, David started therapy on his own. He also asked if I would consider joining him for couples counseling. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. In the meantime, I kept living my life. I poured myself into my paintings. I went on weekend trips with my sister. I learned to cook a few new dishes just for fun. Little by little, I began to feel like myself again. One Saturday morning, I found David sitting on my front porch with a small box. Inside were letters, one for each month of our marriage. He had written them over the past few weeks, reflecting on our life together, on his mistakes, on what he wanted to change. Some letters made me cry. Others made me angry. But all of them were honest. That honesty was something I hadn't seen from him in a long time. I agreed to go to one counseling session. It was awkward at first. We sat across from each other in a small room while the therapist asked us questions we didn't want to answer. But as the sessions went on, I started to see changes. David was listening, really listening, in a way he hadn't before. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to shift blame. He took responsibility, even when it made him look bad. It didn't erase the betrayal. But it planted a small seed of possibility. One night after a session, he told me he knew forgiveness wasn't something he could demand. He said he would spend the rest of his life proving he deserved it. I didn't reply. But for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to walk away. Months passed, and the rhythm of counseling sessions became part of our routine. We still lived separately, but the conversations between us were different now. Less defensive, more open. He would call just to ask how my day was, without slipping into apologies or pleas. I began to see the man I had married peeking through the cracks of the man who had hurt me. One afternoon in early autumn, we met at the park. The leaves were golden, and the air was cool enough to make me wrap my scarf tighter. We sat on a bench, sipping coffee, watching kids chase each other through piles of leaves. David told me he had something to give me. It was a small, leather-bound journal. Inside, he had been writing every day, not to me, but about himself. His fears. His regrets. The moments he was tempted to give up but didn't. He said he wanted me to see the work he was doing when no one was watching. I took the journal home and read it over the next week. Some pages made me ache for him. Others made me furious all over again. But through it all, I could see the effort. I could see that he wasn't just trying to win me back, he was trying to fix himself. One rainy evening, after months of this slow rebuilding, I found myself thinking about forgiveness. Not as a gift to him, but as a release for me. I realized I was tired of carrying the anger. It had been my shield, but it was also my cage. At our next counseling session, I told him. I said I forgave him. He froze, his eyes wide, as if he wasn't sure he had heard me right. I clarified that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean everything was the same as before. It meant I was letting go of the grip the past had on me. It meant I was ready to see what the future could be, whether it was with him or not. Tears filled his eyes. He said thank you in a voice so quiet it barely reached me. We left the session without deciding what came next. But for the first time in a long time, I felt light. Over the next few months, we kept meeting, kept talking, kept working. Some days, it felt like we could make it work. Other days, the weight of the past sat heavy between us. But the difference was, we were honest about it. We didn't pretend everything was perfect. By winter, I knew we had reached a crossroads. Either we would recommit fully, or we would part ways with peace instead of pain. On a snowy evening in December, we sat at my kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the sound of the heater. David took my hand and said he wanted to try again, truly, fully. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. I said yes, but with one condition: we would keep doing the work, no matter how hard it got. He agreed without hesitation. That night, for the first time in over a year, we sat on the couch together, side by side, watching the snow fall through the window. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a perfect ending. But it was real. Forgiveness hadn't erased the betrayal. It had simply made space for something new to grow in its place. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go, not for them, but for yourself.